The most skilled rider you have ever shared a road with is probably the one you never noticed. No drama, no near misses, no stories to tell afterward. Just someone who arrived, rode, and left without a single interesting thing happening. That is not boring. That is what mastery actually looks like, and almost nobody recognizes it. We have a problem in the motorcycle world. We worship the wrong things. We celebrate the rider who drags a knee through a corner at the edge of grip. We share the video of someone splitting lanes at triple digits. We tell stories about the guy who saved a tank slapper at full speed and walked away. All of that is exciting. None of it is mastery. Mastery is invisible. It is the absence of the spectacular. And that is exactly why most people miss it completely. Think about what catches your attention on a group ride. It is never the smooth rider at the back who seems to float through traffic. It is the one in front pushing the pace, diving into corners, making it look dramatic. Your eyes follow the noise, your brain rewards the spectacle, and the rider quietly doing everything right disappears into the background. Here's what the research says about that. Scientists who study expertise across high-risk fields, aviation, surgery, military operations, have found the same pattern over and over. The more skilled someone becomes, the less visible their skill gets. A great surgeon does not make dramatic saves. They set up the operation so that drama never happens. A great pilot does not pull off heroic landings. They make decisions hours earlier that eliminate the need for heroics. Motorcycling works exactly the same way. The best riders are not avoiding danger at the last second. They're reading the road 3 corners ahead and positioning themselves so the danger never reaches them. You do not see this. Nobody applauds when something does not go wrong, but that's the whole point. There's a well-known effect in psychology that explains why newer riders often think they're better than they actually are. Researchers found that people with limited experience in a skill tend to overestimate their own ability. They don't know enough to see what they're missing. Meanwhile, people with deep expertise tend to underestimate themselves. They see the gap between where they are and where they could be because they actually understand how wide it is.
On a motorcycle, this shows up in a very specific way. The rider with 2 years of experience who has never crashed thinks they have figured it out. They corner hard, they ride fast, they feel confident, and that confidence is based on a tiny window of experience that just happened to go well. The rider with 20 years who has seen everything, maybe even gone down once or twice, rides completely differently. They are slower into the unknown, more deliberate in traffic, wider on blind corners, and they feel less confident, not more, because they have actually seen what the road can do. From the outside, the 2-year rider looks skilled, and the 20-year rider looks cautious. The reality is the exact opposite. One is performing, the other is protecting. Here is where it gets uncomfortable for a lot of riders. Speed feels like skill. It gives you a rush, it impresses the group, it looks good on camera. But speed is the easiest thing to add to a ride. It requires the least amount of thought and the most amount of risk. Any rider with a functioning throttle can go fast. Very few riders can go smooth. Smooth is a completely different thing. Smooth means every input you give the motorcycle is deliberate and gradual. No sudden throttle, no grabbed brakes, no jerky steering. The motorcycle responds to smooth riding the way a calm conversation responds to someone who listens before they speak. Everything flows, nothing fights. Watch a truly great rider sometime, not at a track day, on a regular road, in regular traffic. You will notice they barely seem to move on the motorcycle. Their upper body stays quiet, their head stays level. The motorcycle does the work underneath them while they make it look like nothing is happening. That is not natural talent. That is thousands of hours of conscious practice compressed into something that looks effortless. Now here is the part most people do not want to hear. If you ride in a group and you are the one people notice, that is not necessarily a compliment. It might mean your inputs are abrupt. Your corner entries are dramatic because your setup was wrong. Your lane changes are sudden because your planning was late. The motorcycle is reacting to you instead of flowing with you, and everyone sees it because it breaks the pattern.
The rider nobody notices is nobody's highlight reel, but they are everyone's safest riding partner. They're the one who never puts the group in a difficult position, never forces the rider behind them into a last-second decision, never enters a corner at a speed that would scare the person following their line. That is not a lack of skill. That is the highest expression of it. There's a concept in martial arts that applies perfectly here. It is called the concept of no wasted movement. A beginner throws wide punches with their whole body, lots of motion, lots of energy, lots of exposure. A master barely moves. The technique is so efficient, so refined, that it almost does not look like anything happened. The outcome is devastating, but the motion is nearly invisible. Motorcycling follows the same principle. A beginning rider countersteers with a dramatic push. An experienced rider does it with 2 fingers and a shift in body weight that you would miss if you blinked. The beginner's version looks impressive. The master's version works better. And that gap between looking impressive and being effective is the whole difference between performance and mastery. So who are you actually riding for? When you push a corner harder than you need to, is it because the road asked for it, or because someone behind you might be watching? When you accelerate out of a turn, is it because the exit was clean, or because you liked the sound? When you arrive at the end of a ride and someone says, "Nothing happened," does that feel like a failure or a success? The best riders in the world already know the answer. Nothing happened is the goal. That is the ride they trained for. That is the ride that brings them home. And that is the ride they will take again tomorrow and the day after, that for decades. Here is what is worth remembering. The loudest rider in the group is not the best one. The fastest rider in the group is not the safest one. And the rider nobody talks about at the end of the day is usually the one who understood something the rest of them are still figuring out. That mastery is not a performance, it is a practice. And the best version of it is the one nobody sees. So next time you finish a ride and nothing interesting happened, do not think of it as a boring ride. Think of it as the kind of ride that most riders spend years trying to learn how to take. The ride where everything went right because you made it go right, quietly, smoothly, without anyone noticing. That is not boring. That is the point. Which rider are you right now? The one people notice or the one they do not? And which one do you actually want to be? Drop it in the comments. This one is worth being honest about.